When Gurney was about 20 years old, House Harkonnen launched a devastating assault on Chusuk, based on some fabricated accusations made against House Atreides. The attack resulted in extensive destruction to the industrial area, leaving more than a third of the region in ruins. Over 50,000 individuals were captured during the raid, Gurney Halleck and his sister Annette being among them. The death toll was staggering, with 500,000 people losing their lives during the brutal assault, including every remaining member of House Halleck. Because the rulers of the planet were allied with House Atreides, the Harkonnens knew this attack was not only an affront to their rivals, but also a much safer option compared to confronting them directly. Chusuk was also a small and lightly guarded planet, and this made it an ideal target for the 23-year-old Glossu Rabban to initiate his first military campaign. Even at this age, he displayed an inclination towards cruelty, and he took it upon himself to assess the numerous prisoners and categorize them into 3 distinct groups. One group consisted exclusively of young and attractive women. They were destined for the pleasure houses frequently visited by Harkonnen soldiers, and among them was Gurney's sister, a beautiful 18-year-old who was among the first to be selected. The second group, consisting of strong and healthy men, was sent to the slave pits of Giedi Prime, the ancestral home of the Harkonnens. The planet's economy heavily relied on slave labor, and Rabban knew that his addition to the workforce would earn him favor with the Baron. Gurney Halleck was among those men chosen to become slaves. The last group consisted of anyone deemed unsuitable for the labor force or the sex trade, being mercilessly executed. Gurney spent the next 10 years as a slave on Giedi Prime under the harsh rule of the Harkonnens. The conditions were so bad that most workers lived less than 5 years, but despite this, he managed to survive by holding on to his intense hatred for his enslavers. The labor he endured surpassed anything he had ever experienced. In the emerald mines, on the outskirts of Harko, one of the major cities of Giedi Prime, the slaves worked relentlessly for 16 hours every single day, only getting a break on House Harkonnen holidays. Over time, those ruthless conditions made Halleck grow stronger instead of breaking him, and during the night, while the others collapsed in exhaustion, he found comfort in recalling the love songs he composed back home, thinking about the green planet he might never see again. Apart from the grueling labor, the greatest danger came from the other slaves. With scarce food and water, only those who could defend their share against the desperate and the greedy managed to survive in the pits. Despite being initially repulsed by the constant violence, Gurney decided that he would do everything in his power to survive. He learned how to fight with the same intense determination he had once used to master the Bali set. In his 9th year of being held captive, he encountered again the one responsible for his family's demise. Glossu was taking a tour of the pits when one of the guards identified Gurney as the slave who managed to survive in the mines more than anyone else. He found himself intrigued by this slave, finding out that he was the sole survivor among the prisoners taken during the raid on Chusuk. He summoned him for a closer examination, and despite the guard's command to avoid eye contact, Halleck defiantly looked him straight in the eyes with a hatred that was impossible to miss. He questioned Gurney's reckless behavior, asking if he was aware that this insolence is normally punished by being skinned alive. This was supposed to make the slave crawl in fear, but Halleck responded bluntly and defiantly by spitting in his face. Glossu erupted in fury and grabbed an inkvine whip from a nearby guard, commanding 2 others to restrain Gurney. The Harkonnen tyrant lashed the whip across his face with all his might, but Halleck didn't give him the satisfaction of hearing a scream. He was content with watching the crimson mark on his jawline before storming out, abandoning the tour. Less than 1 year later, House Atreides responded to another provocative attack on an ally by launching an operation directly on Giedi Prime. They largely avoided civilian casualties or unnecessary destruction of buildings, and Duke Leto strategically targeted the Harkonnens' soft spot by instructing his troops to liberate as many slaves as possible, among whom was Gurney Halleck. The former slaves were brought to Caladan, the homeworld of House Atreides, and they were given two options. Those who had friends or family on other planets were allowed to contact them and arrange for transportation back home. Those who had no other place to go or wanted a fresh start were allowed to remain on Caladan. The Atreides stood firmly against slavery, and anyone who decided to join their service could expect fair treatment, having the freedom to leave at any time except during war. Duke Leto strongly emphasized that he will forever be loyal to those who are loyal to him. Gurney expresses his willingness to join the Atreides forces on the condition that he would be allowed to look for his sister and bring her to Caladan if he finds her. The officer agreed without hesitation, but knowing the brutal conditions of the Harkonnen brothels, he knew that there was little chance she had survived for 10 years. By the time he turned 30, Halleck had started a new chapter in his life as a soldier for the Atreides. The fighting skills he mastered in the pits of Giedi Prime served as a solid foundation for his training in modern warfare. His unwavering loyalty towards Duke Leto turned him into a terrifying adversary for anyone to face on the battlefield. His superiors took notice and praised his efforts, and by the age of 40, he had secured a position on Leto's military council. He was very happy with the way his life had changed, and he started to play the Bali set once more, amazed at how much of his early training he still retained. Gaining confidence from the positive feedback around him, Gurney embraced the newfound freedom to express his long-held pain from years of slavery through music. He spent years searching in vain for his missing sister, but it wasn't until over a decade after joining the Atreides that he finally received news during a discussion with an agent. The Atreides agent recalled a story told by a drunk Harkonnen soldier who was unaware of his true identity, involving a girl at a pleasure house on a planet close to Chusuk, who died after she snatched his knife and slashed his face. Aware of Gurney's situation, he investigated to find out more about this and discovered that the girl was indeed his sister. It was revealed that the incident occurred on her first day at the Harkonnen facility, being spared from enduring a life of cruelty. The agent subsequently orchestrated a scenario where the Harkonnen soldier was implicated in the illegal transaction of highly sensitive military secrets. Given the notorious reputation of House Harkonnen, it is reasonable to suggest that the soldier endured a painful death. Gurney found out his sister's fate just before a crucial battle during the Grumman campaign. Even the most experienced Atreides soldiers would later recount in astonishment the relentless intensity with which Halleck led the onslaught against the Harkonnen forces. The battle on Grumman was also Duncan, Idaho's first military campaign. Halleck was deeply impressed by the young man's combat skills, being rescued by the Atreides from Giedi Prime, just like himself. As a result, he decided to take Duncan under his wing, who swiftly ascended within their ranks, and as a graduate from Jinnah's school, soon became the swordmaster of House Atreides. At the age of 47, Halleck had been appointed as Warmaster, and together with Tufir Hawat and Duncan, Idaho, became responsible for training and grooming Paul, Duke Leto's son. Gurney was his instructor in shielded melee combat, and they slowly became best friends, engaging in frequent banter, but also sharing with the young Duke his wisdom on what fighting for survival truly means. His experiences in the cutthroat environment of Giedi Prime taught him the lesson that fighting is not something you do when you feel like it, but rather you do it out of necessity. House Atreides has also started training an elite military force, with Halleck and Idaho managing to raise the combat prowess of a small group of warriors to the level of the Imperial Sardaukar. The growing popularity of Duke Leto among the great houses, and the rumors that those elite soldiers could match his Imperial troops in battle, led the Emperor to send the Atreides to DUNE, with the intention of eliminating them once they arrived. Gurney was 55 years old when he arrived on the desert planet, and despite the brutal ambush orchestrated by the Emperor and the Baron, where the Harkonnen and Sardaukar forces wiped out House Atreides during the night, he managed to survive. Together with the surviving members of his crew, he finds refuge among the spice smugglers led by Staban Tuek, getting paid for their services and possibly securing their way off the planet. The agreement with the smugglers stipulates that Halleck must refrain from any hostile actions against the Harkonnens, as this would pose too great a risk for their operations. For the next 2 years, he lived and worked with the smugglers, convinced that House Atreides was gone forever and that Lady Jessica was the one who betrayed Duke Leto to the Harkonnens. Just like in the harsh pits of Giedi Prime, vengeance was the one thing that kept him going, patiently waiting for the right moment to strike. He still had his Bali set and occasionally played it, music being his way to cope with the grief of losing his second family to the same enemy. Unlike many across the Imperium, Gurney never indulged in spice consumption. But when you are living on Dune, the spice is an inevitable part of your existence, so he becomes a consumer like everyone else. The years spent on Arrakis caused his eyes to develop a shade of blue, though not as intense as those who are heavily addicted to spice. During a harvesting operation in the deep desert, Halleck and his fellow smugglers were caught in a trap by the Fremen. They were almost killed until Paul Muad'Dib recognized his former mentor and ordered his men to stand down. Gurney is overjoyed to find out that Paul is still alive, believing that he died during the Harkonnen assault, and his astonishment grows when he realizes that he is the enigmatic leader of the Fremen. He pledges his loyalty to his true duke and joins forces to defeat the Harkonnens. When Halleck finds out that Jessica is also alive, he knows that this is his chance to avenge Duke Leto, as he still believes she is the traitor. When they arrive at the siege, he confronts Jessica with a knife to her throat, insisting that she must confess her betrayal. With an emotional speech, Paul defends his mother's loyalty and love for Leto, explaining that Dr. Yue was the real traitor, ultimately convincing Halleck to drop his weapon. Overwhelmed with guilt for believing this falsehood about Jessica for so long, he is shaken to his core and feels a deep sense of failure. He even goes as far as suggesting that he deserves to be killed, but Paul dismisses the notion. Lady Jessica forgives him, and following this event, he becomes her most loyal protector. The Fremen attacks on the Harkonnens had managed to almost entirely stop the spice production on Dune. This situation forced the Emperor to take action, and he arrived on Dune with 5 legions of his Imperial Sardaukar troops, while also calling upon all other great houses of the Landsraad to join him. As the Battle of Arrakis approaches, Halleck, together with Paul and Stilgar, strategizes on how to harness the force of the incoming sandstorm to their advantage. Gurney is the one who has the satisfaction of launching the House Atreides' atomic weapons as the sandstorm sweeps in, shattering the shield wall. In sync with the plan, the Fremen unleashes a bold offensive by riding sandworms through the hole made in the shield wall, annihilating the Sardaukar and Harkonnen forces. Gurney Halleck felt great satisfaction while witnessing the downfall of House Harkonnen, particularly at the hands of House Atreides, whom he held in profound affection. Following Paul's ascent to the throne, becoming the new Padishah Emperor and the ruler of the known universe, Halleck was initially responsible for training the Fremen forces for their role as soldiers in the upcoming Holy War. Paul gave the fiefdom of Giedi Prime to his loyal friend, and Gurney changed the planet's name into Gamu. He played a crucial role in dismantling the existing slavery system and restoring its damaged environment. But Halleck did not want to be on Giedi Prime, because it was a place that stirred up too many bad memories. And when Jessica returned to Caladan, he requested and was granted permission to join her as her protector. It was rumored that they became romantically involved even before they departed for Caladan, keeping their relationship private to avoid scandal. Gurney Halleck ultimately returned to the desert planet many years later, accompanying Lady Jessica as she sought to uncover the real situation of her daughter Alia, as well as her grandchildren Leto and Ganima. She told him that Alia had succumbed to abomination, expressing her fears that her grandchildren might suffer the same fate. Gurney orchestrated the capture of her grandson, a pre-born child who was just 9 years old at the time, and tested his ability to resist ancestral possession. This involved closely observing and questioning Leto before, during, and after exposing him to significant amounts of spice melange. Halleck enlisted the help of a Fremen named Namri to help with the task and, if necessary, to eliminate the boy. Despite being drugged, Leto manages to escape his captors by running into a sandstorm, and then Halleck discovers that Namri actually serves Alia, with the instructions supposedly from Lady Jessica being deceptions crafted by her daughter. The Fremen soon realizes that Halleck is not the weak off-worlder he had presumed, paying with his life for confronting him. Gurney then uses Namri's robe as a disguise and escapes silently from Jakiru. Later, he encountered a blind individual known as the Preacher, accompanied by Leto, who wore what Halleck initially believed to be a weird type of stillsuit, but it was actually the sandtrout skin the boy had adopted. During their years on Caladan, Jessica had shared some Bene Gesserit insights with Gurney, which helped him in this situation to be certain of two things. He could tell that Leto was honest when he denied being possessed, and Halleck also realized that the rumors were true. The Preacher was indeed Paul Atreides, so he agreed to accompany them back to Arrakis. Despite being present, he could not stop Paul from being killed when he condemned his sister, but he felt no guilt. The wisdom he had acquired over the years made him learn just how insignificant an individual's actions could be in the grand scheme of things. Right after Leto II ascended to the throne, he appointed Gurney as his advisor within Stilgar's council at Siege Tabor. A faithful servant of House Atreides till the end, Halleck carried out his duties until he passed away at the age of 91. He was the last advisor of Duke Leto's original council, and his funeral was held with honors typically given to individuals of significantly higher status. Lady Jessica traveled from Caladan to Dune one final time to honor her faithful servant and companion, with God Emperor Leto leading the ceremonies himself. After the ceremony, his remains were transported to Siege Tabor for the traditional Fremen ritual Gurney himself desired. His water was then given to Leto, who was thought to have treasured it as one of his most valued possessions for the rest of his long life.